Okay, let's switch gears a little bit on pro soccer talk this week. Let's look at the Premier League. There's a lot going on transfer news-wise, managerially, a few changes. I mean, Andy, I can see you nodding your head in appreciation already. That Patrick Vieira to Crystal Palace is close to being confirmed at the time of recording. Rafael Benitez to Everton, the former Liverpool manager, going to Goodison Park. Don't think many of us saw that happening, but kind of makes sense in many ways. And then nobody to Tottenham Hotspur, it seems. I think all three of us have put on our application for Spurs, and we're all waiting by the phone because everyone else has been turned down or turned that job down. Andy, start with you on that. What do you think about Tottenham and those reports about Vieira to Palace and Benitez to Everton?
Yeah, how amazing is it that it just never stops in the Premier League? It just never, ever, ever stops. The transfers, the managers, everything. We've got this tournament going on, and the entire world, or much of the world is focused on that. And then there's just stuff happening behind the scenes every single day. The Tottenham situation is, I mean, pick a word. Pick a word that describes
Keep it clean.
Yeah, just anything that describes a bad situation where nobody seems to be in charge. Nobody has any idea what's going on. Nobody is making smart and sound decisions, and everybody seems to be out to kind of get their own, really, in that situation. Or Daniel Levy's trying to kind of claw back some of the the respect that he had earned over years and years based on what's happened the last couple of years at the club and with the European Super League. And you've got a new director of football coming in who's technically not started the job yet, and he's been through 3 candidates for the managerial position already. And it's just, I don't know. I genuinely don't know. I couldn't tell you now at this point. I thought I had an idea 6 different times this summer who would end up being the manager. At this point, they've all been through. They've all been passed over or passed on the job. I don't know. I don't know who it's going to be.
So we're looking at like Antonio Conte has said no thank you. Nuno Espirito Santo has said no thank you. There's a lot of managers who've been linked. Brendan Rodgers doesn't want the job either. As a Tottenham fan, I heard the words used over here by a few Spurs fans. They said it's embarrassing that they don't have a manager, and it's been since April now that Mourinho was fired, and they don't have a new manager in charge. What do you think's happening there? Do you think that it's managers maybe now in a strong position that they don't want to put themselves in a bad job and lose, the reputation and not have any money to spend because they don't know what's going to happen with Harry Kane?
Yep.
What players are going to be there? What's the budget? Is that just what's happening here? Managers are waiting to see how it all unfolds this summer?
It's not embarrassing that they don't have a manager. It's embarrassing that they are a club of the stature that they are and nobody wants to be their manager. Like, that should be a job that any manager in the world should look at, and outside of the select 10 or 12 that have the elite jobs, and should say, well, that's the highest job that I could get if I want to get into one of those elite jobs. And there's a proven record of going from that job into bigger jobs, and just nobody wants it. I do think it's a mixture of Harry Kane. I think it's a matter of money probably not available for the rest of the squad. I think it's a matter of there's a ton of work that needs to be done to the squad in a very short period of time. Otherwise, they're going to fall off big time in the Premier League and probably not even qualify for Europe. And I also think that just the uncertainty of who's really in charge at the club right now. And I follow the club very closely. I don't know who's calling the shots on what at this point. And I think that if you look at, think about a job for yourself. If you go into a new job, you want to know who you're working for. You want to know all about them. You want to know what they're like, what they demand and everything. And if you go into that interview and you don't know who's really hiring you, who you're really answering to once you're in, I honestly wouldn't want the job either.
And a lot of managers, Nick, we touched it there, seem to be in a situation where they're fine with not taking a job right now because they know that money's going to be tight from a transfer spend perspective. They know that maybe it's better to wait it out for another 12 months and let their reputation rise, because Everton, Palace, Tottenham, it's taken them a heck of a long time to find new managers. A lot of them have been turning jobs down. I want to switch to Everton and Rafael Benitez coming in. Obviously, you're a Newcastle fan. You've watched Benitez lead Newcastle to, I would say, good success over many years. What do you think about that move in particular? Do you think he's the right man to lead Everton to become, top 6 hopefuls, top 4 hopefuls even, or do you think that's a bit outlandish?
Well, the one thing he does as well as anyone is engage with history there, which is interesting because he comes from Liverpool, but he's lived there for a long time. He courted Newcastle fans in a masterful way and got them on board with him, and that saved him down the line. My only question about him is I think he's a very good and pragmatic coach. So what's he going to do with Richarlison? What's he going to do with these players who, Luka Digne is a perfect example of a guy who's going to thrive under him, right? Calvert-Lewin will do well under him. But what about these other guys? Is it, Allen is a good fit? Are all these pieces there? We'll be watching a little bit of a more boring Everton than we've seen in some time. And would Everton fans take that if it meant 5th place? And I think they would. I think they would. And the alternatives out there right now, I think, are wild cards, right? When you brought up Tottenham earlier, I was thinking, I wonder what Shevchenko is thinking now after seeing his star rise, right? So you're right. I looked down that list of available managers, and it's just not much in terms of really guys who would come in and do a job for a club of that size that has expectations of that size. But everybody who's paying attention knows the expectations are down here.
Yeah, it's true. You got some good young managers, but Graham Potter, I don't really see him leaving Brighton, even though a lot of clubs would want him. I think he's maybe going to stay there for another season. You have guys like Eddie Howe out of work, who's kind of just circling, maybe waiting for that big job. Steve Cooper at Swansea's done a really good job the last few years, and his name's been mentioned to a few teams. But yeah, Frank Lampard obviously is around and available as well. Scott Parker, obviously going to Bournemouth from Fulham. So yeah, I mean, there's some good young managers, but you're right. There's a real lack of quality candidates for a lot of these jobs. But Patrick Vieira is an interesting one. Crystal Palace, they've been steady. I mean, look at some of the past managers. Obviously, Roy Hodgson just left. They've had, Alan Pardew before that. They've had Tony Pulis, Sam Allardyce. They have been steady after the Frank de Boer debacle, just keeping it very, very simple and being mid-table. But if they do bring in Patrick Vieira, that would be quite a change, I think, in philosophy and the kind of players they could bring in and just playing stuff. And we all like what he did, I think, at Nice and at New York City FC, and we watched him closely at MLS. And I have to admit, he was my favourite player growing up. So I lived not close to Arsenal in England, and my dad would drive me to Highbury just to go and watch Patrick Vieira whenever I could, because he was my favourite player. And I've had the chance to meet him and interview him when he was at New York City, and a wonderful guy. But you think about the work he did at Man City as a youth team coach before he went to New York City. He's got a clear philosophy and playing style, and Andy, it feels like it could kind of work, right, for both parties. Like Palace, it's a bit of a risk, but for Vieira, he'll probably want to take that gamble to get back in the game and get a Premier League job. For Palace, it's kind of a bit of both. He knows the Premier League well. He's working here as a pundit during Euro 2020 on British TV, so he's in the circles. Do you think that could actually work, or do you think it's too much of a gamble for Palace with all of the players they have, not on the books anymore? They have a lot of flux there in terms of the actual players they have at Selhurst Park this summer.
Yeah, I think it might just be crazy enough that it could actually work in the end, because he's essentially, he might be one of the few examples of a manager. We just talked about all these managers who are not desperate for a job. They're fine without a job. They can wait. I don't know that he can wait. He doesn't have a ton of experience in the managerial game. And so when a job comes available and they're interested in him, even if it's at a time where there's not a lot of money available, even if it's a club like Palace, who I would honestly rate that job of the 20 Premier League clubs, probably the 20th best at the moment, just in terms of where the squad is at, the average age of the squad, what you have to work with going in on day one. Now, if he goes in with assurances, you're getting 2 full seasons, no matter what, then I would be a lot more comfortable if I were him. But I think he's kind of at a point where he just has to take almost whatever anybody is willing to give him at this point. And I do think he's a good manager. I liked what he did at New York City. He was very, very hands-on and managed tactically very closely from game to game. And it stuck out in MLS, where that doesn't always happen. So I think he's a good manager. It's a big step up. It's a really, really big step up when you're Palace, you're one of the 5 or 6 smaller teams in the Premier League, and suddenly you've got every single week almost, you're playing against somebody bigger, somebody with more money, somebody that's expected to beat you. It's a different mentality. But if he can pull it off, then I think this could be a huge stepping stone for him to go to a really, really big job.
Okay, so that's the managers sorted. Players, there haven't been too many moves yet in the transfer market. We're looking at Buendia to Aston Villa, which was a big transfer. Konate to Liverpool, which was a big one. Not many others, Nick. I mean, Kane and Grealish, they're probably waiting until after the Euros, but Man City is circling for those players. Jadon Sancho to Man United. Ben White to Arsenal looks like a really interesting one. Any other moves that, or any of those ones that really catch your eye and think that could be game-changing for that team?
I've just been interested to see what the Man City fallout is going to be. Meaning, are they going to, if they're going to spend 9 figures on Grealish or Kane, where do the dominoes fall? There's been talk about Laporte being a perfect fit for Barcelona. There's been talk about Sterling, potentially as a make weight in a deal for Kane, right? So it's just very, not that I think that makes sense, but again, if I'm Daniel Levy and I'm thinking, ooh, an English international star to take the shine off of, or the dirt off of losing it. So I'd be really interested to see what happens there. I do think Liverpool is probably going to take a couple of big swings here too, whether it's in the midfield. Konate is a huge signing for them, and I expect them maybe to make the biggest deal, but Sancho's happening, and I think it'll be the deal of the summer.
Absolutely. There'll be a lot of transfer news, a lot of managerial merry-go-round still to happen, gents, over the summer months. The Premier League, as Andy said at the start, it's just in the background doing lots of things when there's the Euros, Copa America, Gold Cup coming up. So many tournaments over the summer, but the Premier League never sleeps. We know that. The fixtures are out for next season, and managers will very soon will be seeing them putting teams through their paces in pre-season, which I can't quite believe I'm saying, but we are not far away from early August when this new season is going to start. And at Pro Soccer Talk on NBCSports.com, we'll keep you updated of all the latest transfer news and comings and goings around the Premier League. So, gents, that does this for Pro Soccer Talk this week. Thanks so much for joining me. Obviously, Euro 2020 has been front and center, but it's great, as always, to speak all things soccer with you two. And I look forward to doing that again very soon. So thanks, everyone, for watching. Gents, have a great week, and I'll speak to you both very soon. Cheers.
Hi there, I'm Rebecca Lowe. Make sure you subscribe to watch highlights all season long and join us at the weekend at 7 a.m. Eastern on NBCSN for Premier League mornings, and sign up for Peacock Premium, where you'll have access to 175 exclusive live games all season long.